Did you know that the Statue of Liberty in New York was meant to be built along the Suez Canal in Egypt? Well, hope and enlightenment finally arrived as the Ever Given has been finally freed. But it was an absolute mazza. A ship the size of the Empire State Building was stuck sideways, resulting in the most hectic traffic jam on Earth, with global trade losing the equivalent of $400 million each hour. The internet memes went crazy. Egypt was scrambling and the entire world was watching. And to make things even more 2020-ish, the ship was actually stuck for 5 days. But did you know that once upon a time, a fleet of ships was actually stuck in the canal for 8 years? Yeah, that's right. So life could be much worse, Shaboobs. Say alhamdulillah, innit? But before I tell you more about that, here's some other cool historical facts about the canal that you may not have heard about. The Suez Canal is an artificial sea-level waterway, the longest one in the world and one of the busiest. It connects the Red Sea with the Mediterranean. It provides the ultimate shortcut from Europe to East Asia, connecting a place like Rotterdam in Holland to China, for example. The only other way around it is to pass by the Cape of Good Hope. And as you clearly see on the map, that is much longer, around 3 times the distance, which means it's much more expensive, not to mention the security risks of passing through the Gulf of Aden and the Gulf of Guinea. And so the Suez is a kind of artery or linchpin for global commerce, alongside other vital passages such as the Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Malacca, and the Panama Canal. 12% of total global trade passes through the Suez. That includes 30% of all the world's shipping container volume on a daily basis. According to Bloomberg, 10% of the world's oil trade and 8% of the natural gas trade also pass through the Suez. To put it in perspective, 10 oil tankers were actually stuck there carrying 13 million barrels of oil, which is around 13% of the world's daily crude oil supplies. The geostrategic and financial importance of the canal has also made it a major source of revenue and foreign currency for Egypt, that taxes ships going through its canal $700,000 in tolls, earning an average $15 million every day. Despite the fact that shipping was under strain due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the canal still brought in more than $5.5 billion in revenue for Egypt in 2020 alone. But for the Egyptian government and for ordinary Egyptians, the Suez Canal represents much more than statistics, dollars, and trade. It's a symbol of independence, sovereignty, and defiance. Planning for the Suez Canal officially began in 1854 by a former French diplomat, Ferdinand de Lesseps, who formed what is known as the Suez Canal Company. Suez Canal Company, East India Company, these men love making companies. Building the Suez Canal required massive labor, and construction lasted from 1859 to 1869. Egypt's poor were forced to work on the project for nominal pay under threat of violence. Tens of thousands of workers used picks and shovels to dig the early portions of the canal by hand. And so a lot of blood, sweat and tears were spilled to build this waterway by the Egyptian people. But Egypt's own rights to the canal were auctioned off in 1875, leaving control of the Suez to the French and British empires. Egypt gained its independence in 1922, but Britain continued its military occupation of the canal zone. Many Egyptians resented the lingering colonial influence, and tensions finally boiled over in July 1956 when Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal. 3 months later, tripartite aggression started. A war was waged by France, Britain, and Israel against Egypt. They advanced close to the canal, but retreated in a humiliating manner after being condemned by the US and threatened by a nuclear-powered Soviet Union. The UK's Prime Minister Anthony Eden resigned in the wake of the scandal, and the canal has been Egyptian ever since.
احنا بنشعر بان احنا اقوياء، بنشعر ان الدنيا اتغيرت. اما بتطلع الاذاعه البريطانيه وبتقول ان جمال عبد الناصر كلب مثلا زي ما قالوا، بنقول لهم وانتوا ولاد 60 كلب. بنقول والله ده احنا بقينا كويسين قوي. كان زمان جريدة التايمز تكتب كلمة يسقط رئيس وزراء مصر. والنهارده بورسعيد سقطت رئيس وزراء بريطانيا. الدنيا اتقلبت. الدنيا اتغيرت.
See that Nasser on the side? He's like, ooh, ooh. It also should be noted that the current blockage is definitely not the worst that's happened during the canal's 152-year-long history. The Suez remained closed for 8 years after the 1967 Six-Day War with Israel. 15 international shipping vessels were caught midpoint into the canal and stayed there until 1975 when they were finally allowed to leave. Lol, 8 years, you see what I mean? Now, it's quite ironic in my eyes anyway that the Statue of Liberty was intended for Egypt. French sculptor Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi had originally envisioned a 19-foot-tall statue of a woman clothed in Egyptian robes, holding a massive torch, serving as a lighthouse to guide ships into the Suez Canal from its Mediterranean entrance. The tagline? Egypt bringing light to Asia. But I reckon we should put Mohamed Salah in there, and the tagline should be bringing the Premier League back to Africa. Egypt's Suez Canal was a top priority for President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. His first project as leader was expanding the canal in 2014-2015, doubling the number of ships that can use the waterway per day from 49 to 97. The $8 billion upgrade also intended to decrease the waiting time for the ships. But the promised surplus in revenue has not been delivered. Even worse, other oil and gas routes may take business away from the Suez in the near future. This includes the Israeli-Emirati planned pipeline that links the Gulf's oil to Israel's ports, and another linking Israel, Greece and Cyprus via the Mediterranean. Egypt says these projects may cause losses to the canal revenues by 16%. Look, Egypt will always remain a vital strategic center for the world, unless you want to go around South Africa. No offense, South Africa. But the recent incident is yet another reflection of how volatile the global system of trade, travel and transport is, especially during these pandemic times. Cairo is expected to review the canal's expansion projects, and delays are inevitable at this point, whether it be oil barrels or chemical, electronic and engineering components. Financial compensation for the delays, the rescue operation and all the rest of it will definitely be demanded. But who will pay and how? Guys, obviously smash the like button.